As we are all aware, today we celebrate the life, the legacy, and the lessons of a great, great man, a drum major for justice, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. And this 20th century luminary spoke powerfully and prophetically and helped to shift the paradigm. He helped to change the national consciousness and the national conversation. I believe the history of the presidency and the history of the Supreme Court looks different without the contribution and service of Dr. King. And our nation is better because to some extent we've shifted out of some very dark and dangerous thinking. And our work is not over. Because if some are to have their way, the old wineskins are better. Dr. King was a great man. He was a great man who answered the clarion call at a critical time. He was a great dreamer, a great activist, a great leader. And I think one of his most powerful contributions to humanity was this challenge for each of us to discover that which is within ourselves that turns us on and propels us into the action of being that which God created us to be. Because here's the thing, for each and every one of us, this is so. The greatness that is within us has been easily attained. And here's what I mean by that. God made you in the image and after the likeness of God. So the seeds of greatness were given to you, and you didn't have to do anything for them. The real work is in getting that greatness out so that we can unleash it on the world. Is that right? How many of you suspect that you have more in you? By show of hands. You can have more, you can do more, you can be more, there's more for you to give. And the thing about tapping into that greatness and unleashing that potential is that it requires us to use more than the small part of our spiritual, mental, and physical resources we've been using so far. For what is seeking to be birthed through you, this new life, is going to require you to push. Somebody say push. If I were to ask you to identify and put a percentage on the amount of your spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical resources you're using right now, don't answer out loud. What would the number be? Are you using 25%, 50%, 75%? They say if you're like most people, it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 5%. And the interesting thing is that we live in an age where it's okay to accept the average as a personal standard. But I believe God wants to do something amazing through you. And there is a scripture in the Gospel according to Luke where Jesus is having some contentious conversation. Jesus didn't always do well with the Pharisees and Sadducees. As a matter of fact, more often than not, their exchanges were contentious. And usually Jesus came out on top of the conversation. And so they're having this one conversation. And as the conversation goes along, Jesus says this: no one puts new wine into old wineskins. If they do, the new wine will burst the skins and be spilled, and the skins will be destroyed. New wine must be put into fresh wineskins. And then he said, and no one after drinking old wine who desires new wine says the old wine is good. If you're going to make the most of the new opportunities to express the greatness that God has placed within you, you're going to need some new wineskins. There is no compressing the new you into the old mindset. Are you with me? So one of the things we absolutely must do if we intend to truly experience new life in this new year, we must commit ourselves to learning something new. I got a couple more questions for you, and I don't want you to ask out loud. As the days, weeks, months, and years go by, does your life seem to be getting better? Or are you constantly fighting just to maintain the status quo? If your life is not where you would like for it to be at this stage, maybe one of the challenges is in your commitment to learning new things. In order to facilitate a new life, you have to learn some new things because new things challenge us to think in new ways. Tomorrow's success is built on today's awareness, and if I take today's awareness without expanding it into something deeper and more profound, then there is no way for the universal urge to give me any more than what it's always given me. They say it's insanity to do the same thing and expect a different. There was this experiment that was conducted with a group of monkeys. And these 4 monkeys were placed in a room that had a tall pole in the center of the room. And suspended above the pole were a few batches of bananas. And so when one of the monkeys got hungry, it would start to climb up the pole to retrieve one of the bananas. But just as it stretched out its arm to grab the banana, it would be doused with cold water. And when it was doused with cold water, it would recoil and start to scream and run back down the pole. Then they had another monkey try it. Same thing. Monkey get ready to grab the banana, Scientists douse the monkey with water. The monkey climbs back down the pole. Then they took one of the original monkeys out of the group, and they put a new monkey in the group. And when this monkey got hungry, the monkey climbed the pole, and the other 3 monkeys pulled him down. They took each original monkey out of the group, and before too long, there were 4 new monkeys in the group, none of which whom have ever been doused by the cold water, but all of which who learned that they could not climb the pole. When it comes to learning something new, one of the things we have to make sure we're doing is that we're not learning from other people's obstacles or failures. Because sometimes people give us lessons that point to their inability to do what they thought they wanted to do, and they place those inabilities, those lessons on you. You can't get to where you're going until you've learned what you need to learn about where you are. See, there are always powerful insights that we need to get and learn and know about ourselves. We have the potential, but we've got to make sure we're committed to learning something new every day. Repeat after me. New life requires that I get some new wineskins. So you'd be surprised at the number of people who spend their life just trying to go through the day rather than get from the day. Each and every day holds some lessons and some blessings for us that are intended to help us know how to navigate the seeds of growth that have been placed within us. But here's what I want you to know. Whenever we start to look at our day, there is something about us that has us imagine the day somewhat differently than how it actually was. As a matter of fact, there was a journalist who was in the news recently who admitted that she was fabricating some of her interviews, or she was exaggerating some of what the conversations were like in the interviews. If we're going to get from the day, we've got to make sure that we're not deceiving ourselves about what's actually happening in the day. Sometimes you need to be real clear about what's happening so that you can address it correctly. Are you with me? In order to get from the day, we've got to be willing to deal with the adversity that comes along each and every day. Adversity is a powerful teacher. And sometimes we're tempted to try and run from it rather than run through it. But oftentimes the only way to the other side is through. Sometimes I have to be willing to go through the lessons I've attracted to myself. What if I could accept that I've attracted this experience to me so that it might be my teacher? And when I avoid taking the class, I miss the lesson and the blessings contained therein. They say one of the surest ways to compound a problem is to ignore the opportunity to learn from it. sometimes so afraid that we miss what the fear is trying to tell us. Sometimes so angry that we miss what the anger is trying to tell us. Sometimes so offended that we miss what the offense is trying to tell us. Adversity brings with it many powerful lessons, but we've got to be willing to go through the lessons. One of the most inspiring things you'll see is an eagle in flight. Even scripture speaks about the stateliness of how an eagle spreads their wings. Because the eagle has become a symbol for freedom. But do you have any idea how eagles learn to soar? When the eaglets are in the nest, the mama is biding her time until it's time for the babies to learn how to fly. And so she's more than happy to go out and secure the food and bring it back to the nest. But all the while, she knows the clock is ticking. And when the hour comes, what she does is she positions herself in the nest, dead center. And then she starts to throw her weight around, a little bit to the left and a little bit to the right. Now, I don't know if you know much about eagles, but when they make their nest, they usually put them up in the face of the mountain once they can find a safe little crag where nobody can get to it. And when mama knows it's time for her babies to fly, she'll just start to throw her weight around, moving the eaglets closer and closer to the edges of the nest. She just keeps pushing until one by one, they fall out of the nest. Now, as the eaglets are falling down the face of the mountain, they have two choices. They can either die or they can spread their wings and learn how to fly. It's the adversity that forces them to spread their wings, slow their descent, and start to rise, because they always had within them the potential to make the most out of the challenge. If they don't go through the adversity, or if she doesn't push them out the nest, how will they ever learn about what God has put within them? How many of us have played ourselves short because we were unwilling to get the blessing that came from the adversity? We've got to be willing to learn something new every day. Say, learn something new every day. If you're going to make the most of your new wine, you'll also need to let go of the old wineskins. See, new wine does not belong in old wineskins. They're incompatible. They don't go together. They don't work well together. The eventual result is that the wineskin bursts and the wine is wasted. New wine belongs in new wineskins. But I imagine we all know somebody who says they'd like to grow, and they stay in the same spaces, keep having the same conversations, keep hanging with the same people. They say they want something different, and then they do the same thing. If you're going to make the most of the new life that is here for you in the new year, you've got to be willing to let some things go. If I were to take a rubber band and wrap it around my finger, if it was tight enough, my finger would eventually get dark, yes? But something interesting would also happen. As the finger I wrapped the rubber band around started to become discolored, the neighboring finger would start to be dark as well. And eventually, my entire hand would be affected. The pain that I experienced in the rubber band finger would happen in my entire hand. And I'm just curious that if having an unhealthy condition with one finger would affect the next finger and eventually the whole hand, what does an unhealthy relationship do? What happens when I continue to be in relationships and environments that are unhealthy for me? What is the effect on the rest of my life? Now, I submit to you that if I tied a rubber band around my hand and I took it off, I could immediately see the benefit of removing the rubber band from my hand. Is that right? But I believe most of us don't do that in the rest of our life because we can't see the benefit. Oftentimes, we're unwilling to pay the price if we can't see the promise. And so we find ourselves waiting. And the longer we wait, the higher the price is we pay. Anybody familiar with Fat Joe? Fat Joe said, yesterday's price is not today's price. Can I say it to you another way? It will cost more tomorrow if I don't fix it today. I have to have a commitment to paying the price of releasing and letting go of those things that no longer serve me. Why? Because oftentimes I'm blocking myself from being able to enjoy the new wine because I have not let go of whatever or whoever it is I'm holding on to. As long as I hold on to my old wineskins, Skins that have proven to be incomparable with the new vision and idea and goal and dream I have for myself. As long as I hold on to those, my path for enjoying the possibilities is blocked. Now, here is what happens whenever I introduce a new possibility into an existing experience. Whenever I introduce a new version of myself into my present experience, or whenever I introduce new wine into old wineskins, it creates what's known as chemicalization and structural tension. Repeat after me. Chemicalization is an upset in the mind that is brought about by the conflict that takes place by a high spiritual realization. My new wine, as it makes contact with an old era state of consciousness, my old wineskins. Whenever you introduce a new idea, a new possibility, a new dream, a new goal, a new image of yourself into an existing experience or an existing consciousness, something has to shift or something has to die. Whenever I start to stretch myself and expand myself and feel God expressing through me in greater ways, either the lesser me has to die so that the greater me can live, or the greater me has to die. Either I give up the possibility that I can do, be, and have more, and I live with the frustration of the status quo, or the possibility becomes real to me. And then I open myself up to the creative channels of God, seeking to do something great through me. And here's the thing. When I let go of what does not serve me, I create and open up more capacity to receive my own care. When I hold on to what does not serve me, I'm not serving myself. I'm serving the awareness of lack within me. I think if I let this go, there is nothing better that God can put in my life other than the thing that's old and can't hold the new blessing God is trying to give me. I got to be willing to let some stuff go. I might even have to be willing to let some people go. As we all know, there are some people in your life who add to your life. We should enjoy them. There are some people in our lives who help us multiply our lives. Because of them, we can do exponentially more than we could on our own. We should value them. And then there are some people who subtract from our life. We often tolerate them. And I wouldn't try and force you to do anything that you were not ready to do. Because it's your wine, it's not mine. Repeat after me, it's my wine. I can waste it if I want to. It's important to know when you have subtractors in your life, right? Because some people have a pattern of creating pain. That's what you get when you get them. Now, I'm not talking about in truth. I'm talking about what it feels like when you're in a relationship with them. I'm talking about what the exchanges are when you talk to them. I'm talking about why you look at the phone 4 or 5 or 6 times and let it just ring before you pick it up. Because something in you is saying, ain't nobody got time for this. Hello. I believe that's when Gerda said, give me the benefits of your conviction if you have any. But as for your doubts, keep those to yourself because I have enough of my own already. I believe he was talking to us about the subtractors in our lives. There's some folks we just got to let go of. If we're going to make the most of the new wine that God blesses us with, we also have to do one more thing. We have to find out who needs us. Repeat after me, we do. Put this in your notes. You have what it takes to let your service flow out. You have something valuable to offer. You have what it takes. It's been said that the space we occupy in the world is in exact ratio and quantity and quality to the service we give for the benefit of others, plus the attitude with which we give it. Educator Ruth Love said the roots of happiness grow best in the soil of service. Dr. King said everybody can be great because anybody can serve. The only requirement for someone who is committed to a life of service is a desire to lift people up and the action to follow through on that desire. How can you serve someone? Start small. Like if you're someone who has not had a tendency or penchant or habit for giving yourself in service, start small. Just listen to somebody. The next time you're having a conversation with someone, listen attentively. Not just for the spaces when you can jump right in. Listen attentively. Believe it or not, even God wants to be listened to. If you're someone who hasn't been in the habit of service, what can you do? You can help fill someone's emotional tank. How do you do that? Just by helping them feel wanted, helping them be accepted, helping them be respected. Respect is an easy thing to give to someone you recognize has greatness within them. Just give it away. If you're someone who is not in the habit of giving a lot of service, you can begin easy. Be a blesser. Be a blesser. What's a blesser? Somebody who just walks around blessing people, blessing stuff. If you really want to ramp up your service, bless difficult people. You know the ones who get on your last nerve. The ones with 40 items in the 10 item or less line. The ones who drive slower because you didn't leave sooner. The ones who complain, criticize, whine, and whose permanent mood of happiness rubs you the wrong way. People who talk crazy, roll their eyes, give you attitude when they show up late without an explanation. When you realize you have new wine, you can see difficult people in a new way. Michelle Obama said, when they go low, we go high. But when you bless difficult people, do it silently. This is not the time to tell somebody, I'm praying for you. I put you on my prayer board and I've been working with you. I believe the Lord's going to do something amazing through you. No, just keep it to yourself. Right in the comfort of your own heart. Bless them real good. Because you know the truth. Every person has the seed of divinity within them. But some people forget it. Some people never knew it. And some people disguise it. Bless them anyway. If you don't want to be a blesser, then maybe consider being a lighthouse. When I was in the Navy, we would go out on tours. And at night, the ocean can seem not only like a vast place, but it can also seem like a very dark and an intimidating place. And sometimes off in the distance, with no real ability to gauge how far off that is, sometimes the only thing you can see off in the distance is a light. And that light is always on. If a ship loses its way, that light can help it get itself back on course. If there's a storm, the lighthouse is always a guide to get the ship safely back to the store. And there is always someone in the lighthouse. I'm going to close with this. There was this well-dressed man who was walking down the street. And as he was walking down the street, this woman called to him. She said, "Hey, come here." Turns around, comes back, says, "Yes, ma'am." She says, "I want you to go around the back and chop up some wood for me." He says, "Yes, ma'am." Once he was done chopping up the wood, she said, "I want you to bring some of that wood into the house and throw it in my stove." He said, "Yes, ma'am." Once he was done, he grabbed his jacket, put his jacket back on, and as he was about to leave, the woman said, "Well, before you go, how much do I owe you?" He said, "You don't owe me anything, ma'am. It was my pleasure to serve you." And as he was walking down the street, one of the woman's helpers said to her, "Do you know who that is?" She said, "No." She said, "That's the great educator, Booker T. Washington." And the woman said, "Really? Call him, have him come back." They go get him, he comes back. He says, "Yes, ma'am." She said, "You didn't have to do what you did for me." He said, "Ma'am, I did, because I'm here to serve." That woman would eventually go on to donate millions of dollars to what is now Tuskegee University. See, you never know how the seeds of your service will come back as the blessing for your harvest. So just start somewhere. As someone who listens, as someone who blesses, as someone who is available, or as someone who is a lighthouse. Because God intends to use you because somebody needs you. God bless you.